All right, everybody, here we are for episode 82 of Now Showing with Mike and Wayne. That's right, 82 episodes of talking about movies. So every week it gets a little harder to kind of come up with a topic sometimes because we've talked about so many things. This week, Wayne and I were just tasked with coming up with 3 movies that we just wanted to talk about. I went with 3 weird ones that I think two of them people will know. And I think the last one will be a little bit more obscure. So we'll
Only
see.
2 people will have ever heard of them.
Yes. maybe. We'll see. All right. So the first one stars, I think one of my favorite Hollywood people, as everybody knows this, is Scarlett Johansson. It is called Under the Skin. It is from 2013, directed by Jonathan Glazer. It is a movie about an alien who's basically living on Earth and are taking humans to experiment on them, essentially. And Scarlett Johansson plays that alien. She has a mission. There's not a lot of dialogue in this film. It's very strange. It's very weird.
Let's be honest. If Scarlett Johansson wanted to experiment on you, you'd probably go.
This is true. Very true. So it is a very truthful film, I guess, in that way. It's one of those. It's hard to talk about because it's hard to like tell people that they're going to enjoy themselves when they watch it because they probably won't. It's just really bizarre and weird, but it's really good. So she basically every time when you have something like this, there's going to be, they're learning too much or so it's something along those lines. Like she's getting to understand a bit too much about humans. So then they have to like remove her from the situation. That's the plan. But it's not like an action adventure type, like, oh, we got to chase her. It's still very artistic. I remember watching this movie. I was by myself because I think my wife was out of town or something. And she did end up watching it. So I watched it and I was like, wow, that was pretty incredible. I was surprised at how much I actually liked it. Because truth be told, even sometimes movies can be a little too weird for me or too boring. But I dug it. I was right there with it with every moment. Every cut, every edit, every scene, and it just was really, really intriguing and something I really enjoyed. Then my wife watched it after I had purchased it. I don't know, a couple months later probably, and she's like, "I finally watched that movie," and I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh my god, this is the dumbest movie ever." I'm like, and that's what, and that's where like you have it's like a total 50-50 movie with audience. Either you can sit there and you can sit through the artistic craziness of it, or you just get really bored with it and you don't want to watch it anymore. And there isn't like, it's not one of those movies that has like a definitive, well, there is a definitive end, but it's kind of, you're still left with a lot of questions because it doesn't answer, why the alien is there, why this is happening. It's not about that. It's really just about her experiencing human life for like the first time. And so it is definitely a movie that if you're willing to sit through something that's a bit different, I definitely recommend it. It is a bit hard of a watch. But hey, I think it's really well worth it. And it's something that I know a lot of people, maybe they've heard of, but they haven't seen. It's kind of more of an art house thing that she did in between her Avenger stuff. But yeah, it's definitely something I recommend for people out there looking for something a bit strange and entertaining still. It is entertaining. It is fun. It's just entertaining in a different way. That's what I would say. Wayne, have you heard of Under the Skin?
I have, yes. I don't know much about it other than what you've told me, though. So something I will have to force myself to check out.
Yes. That's basically what most people are going to have to do because it's like I said, it's out there for sure. All right, so Wayne, what's the first movie you wanted to talk about today?
All right, with the NHL on their All-Star break weekend, I went with one of my childhood, and I use the term loosely because it was like teen years, favorites. My dad introduced me to this movie. It is 1977's Slapshot. It is starring Paul Newman in a George Roy film. written by Nancy Dowd, directed by George Roy Hill, excuse me. Obviously, I mentioned it stars Paul Newman, Michael Onkeen, Strother Martin. It is about a failing minor league hockey team and how they find success through violence and hockey goonery. Made 1977, different time. It is along the lines of the Blazing Saddles type, with a lot of choice dialogue and frontal nudity and all of that stuff. But it is absolutely hilarious for what it is, without taking it too seriously. It is just fantastic, incredibly quotable. If you are in the hockey community at all, whether it's just being an NHL fan or playing at any type of level, you will quote this movie incessantly. So basically, Paul Newman is the player coach, Reggie Dunlop, and Michael Onkeen is the team's best player, Ned Braden. Joel McGrath, played by Strother Martin, is the owner of the team, trying to unload it, a la Major League, in a sense. Giving all these reasons why we can't get upgrades, and being tight-fisted and whatnot, and this, that, and the other. And there's this stigma of we got to be old-time hockey, where we stick to the game and whatnot. Whereas there is a new breed of hockey players, three brothers named the Hanson brothers, who are just goons, and brawls ensue, and they inspire the team to greatness, if you will. There's not really a lot to it. It's sports, goonery, and TNA, basically, and all of the things that the 70s really encompassed. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, I guess. But I love it, and I haven't seen it in a while. Actually, this is probably the longest I've gone without watching it. So now that I'm looking it up on IMDb, I think I'm going to have to try and find a way to revisit this gem again. So,
nice. I have been planning to watch this one. I have still yet to watch it. So it's one of those ones that's on my radar. I know about it. I know. Go ahead.
There are so many callbacks to Major League. Like, remember when Jake Taylor is talking smack behind the plate? Same basic thing, where Reggie Dunlop is skating around the other team's goalie, inciting and talking about his girlfriend. Hey, I heard she's a lesbian. She's a lesbian, skating around the ice, just trying to incite the goalie, which works. So the team scores and wins the game. And again, nice. Not trying to highlight and honor, this type of negative talk, if you will, in this day and age. But you got to keep in mind when you watch this, that the time period that it was made, and a different time when people thought what things were considerable and whatnot. So humor wise.
Right, exactly. Yeah, digs were different. I mean, that's the thing. That kind of stuff, sport, I mean, they still do that kind of stuff today, but it's different. Everything changes over time. If Major League were made today, it would be, the disses would be there probably, but they would be a little different. It's one of those ones I've always wanted to check out. I'm not big into hockey, as you know, Wayne, so it hasn't been like high on my radar to like, oh, I need to see this immediately.
Right.
But I definitely will watch it at some point because I know you're a big fan, and then we can talk about what I thought of it and if I think it's any good. I'm sure.
Fingers crossed you enjoy it, sir.
I'm sure it's great. All right, so I'm going to move on to my next one. I'm going to keep it weird. This one, I'm sure people have heard of this one. It's called Mother. It's from 2017. It's directed by Darren Aronofsky, starring Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, Ed Harris, Michelle Pfeiffer, Domhnall Gleeson, Brian Gleeson, and Kristen Wiig. It is a movie full of metaphors. It is a mother wakes up, or not a mother yet. She's pregnant. She wakes up, and her day starts, and then there's like her husband is there, and he's kind of acting a little weird, and then they have this giant party with people over, and there's like possible devil worshiping and craziness, and people are getting murdered, and it like I can't even give you the plot of this movie because it's really hard to decipher. But once you understand it and you understand what you're watching, it kind of all clicks together. I don't want to say anything because it's not that old. I don't want to spoil it. Um, it's a really interesting film. It's definitely an experimental film for Aronofsky to do. Um, for him to cast Jennifer Lawrence at that time when she was like this huge star, kind of like Scarlett Johansson in Under the Skin. Like you get these big movie stars that are at like the height of their career, and then some director's like, "Hey, I got this script for this really weird film. Do you want to be in it?" Now, I think Jennifer Lawrence and Aronofsky, I believe they were dating at the time, so that could be how the movie came about, or they started dating afterwards. I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely strange, and it involves metaphors with Mother Nature, and it is a certain character. Is he God? Is he the devil? There's all these kind of religious parallels back and forth that Aronofsky wanted to explore. He did do Noah before this, so I don't know if he's been somewhat into religion and wanting to kind of explore the myths and stuff behind it. So he kind of set this movie up. It's a horror film, but it's more of an allegory for the world, essentially. And it really, for me, it worked. It just, it was one of those things. I watched it and it clicked. A lot of people hate this movie, so I don't want it like those people. That's fine. I completely understand if you don't like this movie. They're not wrong for not liking this movie. I believe my wife fell asleep to this one, so she didn't get to tell me that she hated it, but I'm sure she would have hated it had she finished it. Or just told me it was stupid, which happens quite often. Yeah, it is just, man, how to describe this movie? It's like watching a fever dream that someone had, essentially. And it gets so crazy at the end of it. Like, it just, so many things are happening, blood everywhere, people are dying. It's nuts. It's a nutty film, but I really like it a lot. If you missed this one, or if you skipped it because you heard it was bad or weird, it allowed Aronofsky, because of the career he had. I think this was the one that he kind of did for himself, and he's like, I have this movie in me. I'm gonna make it, and people are either gonna love it or they're gonna hate it. And that's basically same with Under the Skin. That's basically what happened. Is you got people championing it, and then the other side you got people saying how it was, the worst movie they ever saw. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. So it's never not interesting, and I think that for a movie to be that, even if it's bad, is at least entertaining to me. So if I could watch something, even if it's awful, and I could watch something that I'm like, oh well, that was intriguing, and then they did something, they tried to do something. That always makes me a little more interested in it. I rather watch something that was done with the intention of trying to make something great and failed. I think those are always interesting watches, and at least you can kind of see. A lot of times you can see where it went wrong, and in this case, like I said, to me, this movie is not a failure. But I think my point is that even if it was, I would have still been more intrigued by this movie than I would, something Hollywoodish, if you will. So yeah, Wayne, have you watched this one?
I have not, sir. I was one of the people who was like, yeah, maybe later.
Oh, and I don't blame you. It's a weird one, and it definitely it earns its welts, if you will. Like it's a movie that he has to kind of wear on his sleeve, and when people are gonna probably for the rest of life like, oh man, I love those other movies, but Mother, man, what the fuck was that? Like he's gonna have to probably answer questions for a long time. Yeah, it's a crazy ass movie. If you haven't seen it, definitely, if you're into weird and crazy movies, check it out. And I'm sure we'll get people, oh, you think that's crazy? I've seen crazier films too, people. This is just ones I think that maybe people might enjoy because of the people that are in them, or they're a little bit more, they look a little nicer. Yes, there are crazier and more weirder films that are made on a lesser budget than these movies I've mentioned. But these are just a couple that I really like, and I want people to see them and talk about them more. So, Wayne, what is your next one?
Well, for the second one, I was trying to think of something that I haven't already talked about, which was incredibly challenging because in 82 episodes, we have talked about a lot of cinema and TV.
Yes, we have.
And this, that, and the other. So I wanted to talk about something that just really had an effect on me, really moved me in a way that just maybe stop and think about things. And the movie that I chose for this one is 2014's This Is Where I Leave You. And I'm a big fan of this one, and I probably have mentioned it before, but I don't recall big topic that we talked about, so I'm talking about it now. This Is Where I Leave You is on the same level of an Elizabethtown for me, and in the ballpark of like Serendipity, where you think you're going one direction with it, but it really just kind of hits on a different level. So, directed by Sean Levy, written by Jonathan Troper, it stars a pretty hefty cast, which is impressive. Jason Bateman, Tina Fey, Jane Fonda, Adam Driver, Rose Byrne, Corey Stoll, Catherine Hahn, Connie Britton, Timothy Oliphant, Dax Shepard. Yeah, quite an ensemble there. So let me give you a little breakdown about what we're dealing with here. After their father passes away, four grown siblings, bruised and banged up by their own respective lives, are forced to return to their childhood home and live under the same roof together for a week. I believe it is they are a Jewish family. I believe it's called they're sitting Seder, I believe is what it's called, to just receive people that want to give their condolences and whatnot.
Yep.
Over the week, their oversharing mother and assortment of spouses, exes, and what might have beens come in and out of their lives, confronting their history and frayed states of their relationships among the people who know and love them best. They ultimately reconnect in hysterical and emotionally effective ways amid chaos, humor, heartache, and redemption. So, basically, the four siblings, Jason Bateman, Tina Fey, Adam Driver, and Corey Stoll, they all have issues with one another for different reasons. Exes and shared lovers and grudges and this, that, and the other thing. I'll come to a head basically as the mother of the family, played by Jane Fonda, announces that she is involved with a new partner who happens to be a female. And, it's just like, it's totally great the way the family embraces it, said it's great and all that stuff. It's just, and that's just one little aspect of it. Adam Driver is having trouble coping with the funeral and whatnot. In one scene, they are getting high during the funeral, and the smoke alarm goes off. It's just hilarity ensues, and then a lot of deep stuff happens as well, and resentment from childhood rears its head. And it's one of these films that makes you stop and just kind of analyze, like, all right, wow, they're fucked up for many different reasons. Why am I fucked up? Let's examine. So, and at least that's how the movie affected me and made me think about things, and just that. And, the real purpose is to affect somebody when they watch your art, if you will. And This Is Where I Leave You does that for me on many levels.
I concur, sir. It did that for me as well, and my wife did not hate this one. She actually quite liked this film. When we watched it, whenever, I think 5-6 years ago, whenever it came out, and then a little bit after that, I think. These type of movies. I mean, something like August Osage County or The Family Stone, which we've talked about here, or Happiest Season, which we've talked about. Dysfunctional family dramas are my bag.
Absolutely, 100%.
And this is another one that I think maybe because it didn't do as well, people don't talk about it enough. But this one I thought was really good too. It had, like you already mentioned, it has a great cast. Not only the siblings, but then their husbands or boyfriends or girlfriends, and then the people that left behind. Timothy Oliphant, and the one he meets, Rose Byrne. These, just the amount of people that got to be in this movie, it was impressive.
It is streaming on HBO Max right now for anybody that wants to check it out.
Nice. Definitely check it out, because like I said, I feel like it's one that people did miss, and people don't really talk about enough. So Mother is streaming on Paramount Plus. If you have that, I should have mentioned that. And Under the Skin is streaming on Showtime. So if you have Showtime or Paramount Plus, you can watch Under the Skin and Mother. And my next one is streaming on HBO and HBO. I think it might just be HBO Max, but it's one or the other. or both. So my third movie is this movie called House from 1977. It's a Japanese film. The way I came upon this movie is I went to watch what I thought was a 1980s horror film on Hulu, and it turned out to be a 1977 recently released, believe it or not, Criterion film from Japan that was just weird art house horror film that I'd never heard of, and that most people I don't think had ever heard of at that time because it had been unreleased up until like 2009, I think it says here in Wikipedia. It's a weird fucking movie, man. I put this thing on and I was like, I don't think this is the right movie. Now I since have seen the 1980s House and I enjoyed that movie as well. But having an experience like this, like watching this type of movie, not knowing anything about it, and then just being like, wow, that was weird. Oh my God, wait, what's happening? And so it's I'll give the plot a little bit since most people probably won't know this one. In Japan, a young girl known as Gorgeous, so called for her beauty, has plans for a summer vacation with her father, who had been in Italy scoring film music. Her father returns home and surprises Gorgeous by announcing she has a new stepmother. This upsets Gorgeous, whose mother had died 8 years earlier. Gorgeous goes to her bedroom and writes a letter to her aunt asking to come visit her for the summer instead. Gorgeous's aunt replies and allows her to come visit. Gorgeous invites her 6 friends: Prof, who is highly academic and very good at problem solving; Melody, who has an affinity for music; Kung Fu, who is athletic and especially skilled at Kung Fu; Mac, who is highly gluttonous and loves to eat; Sweet, who is bubbly and gentle; and Fantasy, who is a constant daydreamer, to come along with her. On arriving to the aunt's house, the girls are greeted by Gorgeous' aunt, to whom they present a watermelon. Okay, so that whole description right there was just really weird and bizarre. So that's how this movie starts. And then you get there and like weird things start to happen. There's ghosts in the house, possibly. The house is evil. So it's not honestly super different than like something like the movie House from the 80s, because that's also about a house that's kind of like haunted, like possibly another dimension type thing. And that's how this movie plays out. But this one came out earlier, and like I said, no one to my knowledge really saw it because it went unreleased for so long. And then just everyone starts getting murdered, and there's lots of blood and nudity and just gore. But it's all very artistic and very weird, and it's just, I mean, I haven't seen it since I watched it this one time, and it still stuck with me. So, I mean, just the visuals alone in this film are pretty enticing, and the movie itself, it's just, you have to see it. Like, you really do. Like, it's just such a mind fuck of a movie. It's weird, which is right up my alley, and you're just kind of, when it's over, you're like, whoa, what the hell was that? And so and I'm sure you probably haven't heard of this one, Wayne, but this one is accessible. It's on HBO and HBO Max. So definitely, if you are interested in the weird, check out the 3 that I talked about. I was thinking about talking about Takashi Miike. I've mentioned him a lot on this podcast. There are lots of weird movies from him. Go check him out as well. But this is just one. I figured I'd mention this one instead because this one is a little bit more obscure, and people don't know about it. So that's that. That's my final final of the week. Wayne, what's your final?
I went with something that I connected with one of our reviews of the week. And I know I've talked about it before, so I apologize in advance, but it is 2003's Big Fish. Directed by Tim Burton, written by Daniel Wallace, the novel Big Fish, a novel of mythic proportions, and the screenplay was done by John August. It stars Ewan McGregor, Albert Finney, Billy Crudup, Jessica Lange, Helena Bonham Carter, Alison Lohman, Robert Guillermo, Marion Cotillard, Matthew McGregor, David Denman, Missy Pyle, Danny DeVito, Steve Buscemi. Quite another ensemble of mythic proportions, if you will. So, how do you describe this film? Well, the tagline on IMDb says, a frustrated son tries to determine fact from fiction in his dying father's life. So, let's just break it down. Edward Bloom is a storyteller. And not in the sense that he tells lies, he tells stories to make the mundane seem interesting, if you will. And William Bloom, played by Billy Crudup, is trying to decipher what the hell his father is actually talking about. Now, this is a great film because it jumps from present to past, and it just weaves in and out, in my opinion, flawlessly. This is one of the first films that impacted me when I just really was like, whoa, like totally Ted from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, like, whoa. So Ewan McGregor plays young Edward Bloom during the flashback scenes, and as he's going on these amazing journeys and seeing incredible things, while Albert Finney plays the senior Edward Bloom, kind of in his dying states as a last effort to try and get his son to accept the way he tells his stories and trying to pass it along about how when you go to tell a story, you start out with, well, it's like this. Just putting a lot of emphasis on the mystique, if you will. Edward's time comes to an end. You meet all of the characters in real life from his stories, and you see that the giant, played by Matthew McCrory, isn't really a giant. He's just a very tall man. And there's a circus scene that's just reason why I chose this, because the parallels for me were just spot on, just for what was going on. Danny DeVito is the ringmaster, and if you know Danny DeVito's stature, he's squat, if you will, short, and just the way it plays out. There is a scene with a conjoined twin. In the past, it was referred to as a Siamese twin, where when you finally meet the character, it's not a conjoined twin. It's two twins who are of Asian descent. So kind of like telling the story, putting it together, putting a spin on it, if you will.
Yeah.
And I'm prattling on and on and on and on about this because this is a very complex story to decipher and tell. So, sir, what are your thoughts about Big Fish? I know we've talked about it before, but let's refresh the audience.
It's a beautiful film. I think it's kind of like Tim Burton probably could have not made another movie after this, and this would have been like his magnum opus, his goodbye to film, if you will. Obviously, he has, but I feel like this movie was very personal to him, which is I think why it connected so well with the audiences, and it kind of lives on through the audiences because as more people discover it, it becomes, I think, a favorite of a lot of a lot of people. I mean, it's just one of those movies that it's a feel good film. Who can't relate to, especially as you get older and, people dying in your life and stuff like that and looking back at your life. I think we all relate to that now. I think this movie actually becomes more relatable as you get older. And it's got great performances from everybody. Ewan McGregor as the younger version, and Albert Finney as the older version. Billy Crudup is always really good. Like you said, DeVito. Of course, Helena Bonham Carter. This is back when her and Tim Burton were a thing, so she was in everything. But she's great. I mean, it's one of those things you can't really. Oh, of course he cast her. He was lucky enough to be dating probably one of the best actresses out of England. So,
yes.
And he used her a lot. It was to his benefit more than it was to hers, I would say.
She was doing him a favor a lot of the time, for sure.
Essentially, yes. I mean, because she is amazing. And I think the fact that she appeared in a lot of his movies, I think a lot of people will look at, oh, well, he just put her in there. But, I mean, she's really talented. So I think she was great in this.
The whole title, The Big Fish. The Big Fish is referring to the Jessica Lange, Alison Lohman character, Sandra Bloom, his wife, basically, Will Bloom's mother, because she is so far out of his league. She is the big fish. And he finally breaks it down. Well, the one way to catch a big fish is to offer her a wedding ring, kind of thing. It's just like those little subtle. There's a specific word or phrase that describes this perfectly, and I can't think of it because I'm just a uneducated oaf, if you will, at times right now. So there's a technical term for what this type of storytelling is, and I just can't think of it. But it is utterly fantastic from beginning to end. And I have yet to meet a person who hated it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's a fantasy in reality, I think. You know what I mean? Like it's turning what was a pretty, fantastical life into even a more fantastical life, I guess. Like this
Yeah.
guy lived a pretty incredible life without all the fantasy. But then you take it and you add all that into it, and it just makes it better, makes it more of a story. Um, I mean, visually, it's stunning. It's one of those things that sometimes Tim Burton's style works for certain things, sometimes it doesn't. This movie, it totally worked for it. It reminded me similar style to like Edward Scissorhands.
Yep.
It's yeah,
Exactly.
it's definitely like this is a movie. If you haven't seen, check it out. It's usually floating around. I'm not sure if it's on Netflix right now, but it's
It is
usually floating
currently
around.
streaming on Netflix. Yes.
Okay, there you go. I was gonna say it's almost always on some sort of streaming service, which is good because then people can keep discovering it. All right, so that's our.
Even if you had to pay for this movie, it's more than worth it. And if you don't like it, Kirky will happily reimburse you.
That is not true. Wayne made that statement on his own recognizance. I think that's the word.
It's totally
and
true.
he's
It's
alive.
displayed at the bottom.
Just
Moving
go
right
read the
along.
fine print. So anyway, I was doing a bad way of wrapping up that segment anyway, so that's okay. All right, so we're going to move on to our next segment, and that is reviews
Of the week.
Wow, dark. I like it. All right, so we're going to
The
start
Batman's
off with
coming.
we're going to start off with one I think is a little bit weird, like we've been discussing, and it kind of pairs nicely with Big Fish a little bit too, I think, in a way. Um, and that is Guillermo del Toro's adaptation of Nightmare Alley, which was a novel in 1946, adapted to a film in 1947, and now readapted by Guillermo del Toro himself. Starring Bradley Cooper, Kate Blanchett, Toni Collette, Willem Dafoe, Richard Jenkins, Rooney Mara, Ron Perlman, Mary Steenburgen, and David Strathairn.
I
It.
love that we have a Step Brothers reunion.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think of that. That's hilarious. They don't share the screen though, but at least they're in the movie together. That's
Yep.
funny. I was
And
like, I'm like, as soon as you said that, I'm like, John C. Riley and Will Ferrell aren't in this movie, and then I'm like, oh wait, Steenburgen and Jenkins.
between William Dafoe and Ron Perlman, though, I couldn't think of two better casting choices for
Oh,
Carnival people.
oh yeah, yeah. And it's funny to say that because you think it's more of an insult, but I'm sure they probably take it as a compliment. They're probably like,
Yep.
yeah, of course, we'd cast us too. All right, so a little backstory behind this. Guillermo del Toro, I heard this on a podcast he did with Mark Maron. Him and Ron Perlman in the 90s were in New York. They'd already worked together, and they were just kind of hanging out. They may have been at some film festival or something, and they went and saw the original Nightmare Alley, and they were like, man, wouldn't it be great to like play, Ron was like, oh, it'd be great to play a role like that, and Guillermo was like, it'd be great to direct a movie like that. Well, fast forward all these years later, Guillermo del Toro has plenty of passion projects that he likes, that he wants to work on, and he's had a hard time getting a lot of them off the ground, but he got this one off the ground. I'm assuming it's because he was able to nail down such an all-star cast for it.
Yeah, B minus.
Yeah.
Just kidding, folks.
It's so the plot is 1939 Stanton Carlisle. He's in a house that's burning down. He's dragging a body. I'm not spoiling anything. That's how the movie starts. And then it goes 2 years later, and he meets up with like this circus, and he kind of works his way. I wouldn't say forces, but like just won't leave, and they just keep giving him odd jobs. And then he ends up kind of teaming up with Toni Collette's character Xena and somewhat taking over for her partner husband role in helping her scam people essentially in their carnival game that they do, which is like reading minds essentially. So he learns all that. All the while, he's more interested in the younger Carney, played by Rooney Mara, which is Mary Margaret Molly Cahill. Mary Margaret Cahill. And he kind of uses his abilities that he found out about after a certain character passes away. He then, him and her decide to go off on their own. and where he then meets this. He's doing his basically he's a con man who conned the circus into believing that he was good at what he did, and then he got this girl to run away with him, and then he's now in the big city, and he kind of comes toe to toe with someone who is probably smarter than him in the lovely Kate Blanchett. And it's a really interesting film on kind of like what the best. I was just thinking this the other day on how to describe it. It's like it's a film that's basically like karma. Like there's always going to be something that comes to get you in the end if you play a game like this. I guess is essentially. It's not the words I had in mind, but does that make sense, Wayne?
It does. Karma's going to get you.
Yes, essentially.
Play stupid
And
games, receive stupid rewards, or play evil games,
yes,
get evil rewards, if you will.
yes, exactly. Everybody in this movie, I think, is on top of their game. It's a great performance from Bradley Cooper. He's very charming. Willem Dafoe is very much the type of circus ringmaster that you would expect him to be. Ron Perlman plays the brooding strongman very, very well. Toni Collette as Xena, the
Warrior Princess?
Yes, Xena the Warrior Princess.
Sorry.
As the what do you call that? The medium or whatever.
Fortune teller?
Fortune teller, yeah, because they keep telling him don't go into the supernatural, don't go into that kind of stuff because that's where you get yourself in trouble, and that kind of leads to Stanton's downfall, if you will.
Yep.
A lot of foreshadowing goes on in this movie. Go ahead, Wayne.
Just basically, it's all a grift, if you will. It's a con. It's meant to separate you from your money.
Exactly. This is a movie I'd been waiting for. I actually a month ago I watched the original because I was interested to see where what when I finally saw this one where the comparisons were and stuff. And I really like the original a lot too. It's done really well. Obviously, it's black and white. I will say it has the same ending, but it puts a little bit of a happier button on it, in the fact that like at the end of again, not spoiling anything, but the end of this movie is not very uplifting. And
no, definitely not.
The original, because it was 1947, I think was like, we have to put like a somewhat of redemption bonus at the end. Where this movie, because it's 2022 or 2021, 2022, didn't have to do that. And I assume that's probably how the book ends to it. It ends on a downer. I really liked this movie, Wayne. I thought all the performances were incredible. I thought it looked fantastic. Guillermo del Toro is a phenomenal director, so I've always been a fan of his work. This one is not really a thriller or horror, which is what he's known for. It's more of a drama about a con man, essentially, getting his comeuppance at some point. And, the fact that all of our actions have consequences, right? That's really what it's about. And we can be blinded by that fact if we're just focused on one thing. And in his case, he was focused kind of on being the best that he could be and the money that he could make at it. Those were the two things that he really focused on.
Right. For me, it was really almost a tale of two movies, because I absolutely loved the beginning with all the circus stuff going on and the cons and the grift. And then after they leave, it's kind of, I don't know, it hit a slow patch for me. And I'm like, come on. So
it is longer than the original. So because you're right. It does. I think when he leaves the circus, we still have like an hour and a half left. So yeah. It's a long movie because it's 2.5 hours. What's funny is I believe they added more time in the beginning. So a lot of the stuff that was there in the second half that you didn't like was in the original, but they had less time at the circus, I believe. If I remember, I'm trying to think of any extra scenes. And obviously the original wasn't very violent because it was 1947. So this day and age, they can go very violent. Yeah, to me, like I said, to me it was one of probably the better movies I've seen from 2021, in my opinion. That's just me. I won't speak for Wayne. Obviously, he already said what he thought of it. But it is a slow. I will agree that the last like hour or so is a slow burn. So you have to really kind of be into the boil of it, because it builds up to something for sure. It's just it takes its time to get there. But I really dug it. Yeah, I really liked it a lot. I would say for me, it's a solid 9 out of 10. Wayne, what's your ranking on it?
Yeah, I'm going 7. I was started off really strong, and it just hit that slowdown for me, and it turned into more of a longer burn than I was ready for, I guess.
Yeah,
So not
I
not
get
to
it.
take away how good it is for me, it just wasn't there. But again, it is
Okay,
very, very good. But
I get it. It makes sense. You
it's
could
not
check
something I'm
that
going
one
to be in
out.
a hurry to revisit anytime soon. So
Yeah, right. I hear you. You can check that one out on Hulu and HBO Max right now. It's part of the Disney deal that they made with HBO. That they'll release their R-rated films after a couple months in theaters to HBO Max and Hulu, which Disney pretty much owns most of Hulu at this point. Instead, because they can't put, like you're not going to see Nightmare Alley on Disney Plus, so they have to put it somewhere. Um, so that's their choice that they made. So you can catch it there now. Our next one up is a Netflix romantic drama / comedy. I didn't find it super funny, but that's what it says on here. It is called Through My Window, and it hit Netflix on Friday. It's directed by Markel Forrest, written by Ariana, or based in the book by Ariana Godoy, written by Edward Sola. The cast, I will do my best here: Julio Pena, Clara Galli, Pilar Castro, Hugo Arbuse, Rachel Lascar. It is the story of young love, similar to a Romeo and Juliet scenario. You have a rich family and a not so rich family across the street from each other. And it's called Through My Window because this girl notices this boy through her window, and she starts kind of spying on him, stalking him in a way, in a cutesy way, if you can stalk someone in a cutesy way. And he notices, but he plays it off cool. He's playing the I just sleep around with as many girls as I want type of guy, because that's how his dad has kind of raised him. Um, their main characters are Aries and Raquel. Those are the two star-crossed lovers, if you will. And we then kind of get to see how their story unfolds. I will say, you hear me say Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed lovers. It is not for teenagers. I guess teenagers could probably watch it. It's not for young kids. It's rated. It's TVMA because it's technically a TV movie or whatever. It's rated R. There is sex and nudity in this film.
that's an understatement.
There's a
You're
couple of
getting
montages.
into this. It's like, wait, they're doing it again. What? Well, hold on now. I kind of wish that the kissing booth movies would have been a little bit more like this.
That's kind of, it's funny that you brought that up. I was actually thinking of that same comparison. It is, and then I'm thinking, well, I guess Kissing Booth is kind of like a Romeo and Juliet type of story, because you have a wealthy family and a non-wealthy family. Um, it's just
Whoa!
really
Let's
hard.
stop right there. We've got a super wealthy family, and then just sort of wealthy.
Sort of wealthy. That's right. You're right. She's not poor. Like she just has to have a job. Um, yeah, they're definitely like well off.
Yeah,
And this one, there is definitely, I think, that different. She lives well, but same thing. She has to work a job, and I know what you're saying, because like she works the job at the was the ice cream shop, I think, in this one,
yeah,
and he he just acts the whole movie. I was like, oh, this guy's kind of a dick, but
yep.
he does come around towards the end for sure, because you can tell you finally get to learn a little bit behind his backstory and what he's kind of holding in, and how his father is. And when he found out that his father was, or his mother was cheating, it became a thing where the dad was like, oh well, I've got plenty of girls across the world. Marriage is just for for holding things together. It doesn't have to be about the sex stuff. And that's where the son got, all confused about who he wanted to be and if he should be different or better. Yeah, I like this movie, I think, enough, Wayne. It was not what I expected it necessarily. I was a little worried. I mean, like I said, there is a good amount of sex in it, but it's not like there was this is it from France or Spain or something, this movie called 365 that hit Netflix that was basically like a softcore porn. It wasn't like that. Some scenes I would say went on the verge of that type. But it's definitely a movie about romance. It has a lot of the same beats as like a kind of a teenage rom-com almost, because it made me think of 10 Things I Hate About You, because they have the prom scene at the end.
Yeah. When you think about it, they have the first time, if you will. It's very, passionate and whatnot. And then he just is like, all right, I'm going to play video games now. And she's kind of like, bro, what the fuck?
Right. Yes. He's trying to treat it the way that he's treated every sexual relationship that he's ever had. And she's really in love with him. There are some nice beats, I think, at towards the end, especially the last thing that he says to her before he does come back a little bit at the end. But the last thing he says before he goes, spoilers, whatever. It's a romantic drama. There's really no spoilers. It ends how you think it should end. We'll just put it that way. There's a nice thing that he says to her that I thought was really sweet. I don't want to say it because I don't want to ruin it, but there was a real sweet moment that they had before he went on the airplane.
I'll never let go, Jack.
Yeah.
But there's no room for you on this giant door I'm on.
But you have to let go because you can't stay on here. Go find your own door, you little bitch.
Thanks for the last
There are none of those moments. Even though, not to say that at some point in the movie, I think that he would have deserved that treatment, because, like I said, he was kind of a dick through most of the movie. But like I said, as it's unraveled, you start to see who he is and why he is the way he is, and that he wants to be different and he doesn't want to be his dad. Yeah, I mean, I thought this was a good movie, Wayne. It is in Spanish, so you will read, it will have subtitles. I'm not sure if there's a dub version. I still recommend watching the original language.
See, for me, it was dubbed over in English.
Oh, it was? Okay. See,
yeah.
when I clicked on it, it was in Spanish. So interesting. Yeah. Maybe you've got your settings messed up. But so there you go. You go watch it in either language. And how was it dubbed up? Was it dubbed good?
Yeah, I mean, you can obviously see the lips were off, but it didn't bother me at all. And obviously, as having a little bit of problem with the dyslexia and reading and keeping up with things.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I was pleasantly surprised because I was a little bit, as I've said before, I struggle with keeping up with the picture, trying to interpret what I'm reading. So
yeah, for sure.
Well, it turned out really well.
Yeah, good. Well, there you go. It's a good dubbed version, everybody. They're out there sometimes. It just depends on how much patience people have with them. So I would rate this a solid 7 out of 10. I'd say it was enjoyable. I don't know that I'll watch it again, but I had a good time with it, and I think it fits in, like you said, when it's definitely a better version of Kissing Booth. And to me, like I said, to me it kind of felt like 10 Things I Hate About You, which is a movie I really like. So if those are some movies that interest you, definitely I would say check it out. Wayne, your rating?
Yeah, I'm gonna go 6.5. Didn't love it, but you know,
decent enough.
Yep.
All right, so let's go to what. Got a couple things I wanted to talk about.
I am very excited to be as vague as possible I can about Book of Boba Fett. I don't know. It's had some mixed reviews so far, but the last 2 episodes 5 and 6, wow. And, without going into too much detail, fans will be very happy because I am a huge fan, and Yeah. Wow. Um, Interesting direction that the show has taken. Did not expect it at all. And I'm really kind of curious how they tie it all back together. And if that's vague, I have succeeded. If it's frustrated you, I apologize. But if you watch the show, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. Also, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series drops May 2022. That was just released. So more
I
Star
saw
Wars coming
the
my way.
yeah. I've only watched the first episode of Boba Fett, so I have to get on that. All right, so I have watched a bunch here lately that I haven't talked about. Antlers from Scott Cooper, decent film of his. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Come Play uh, with Jillian Jacobs is on Showtime right now. It's another horror film. I gave that a 7.5 out of 10. I actually quite like that one. It didn't really get a lot of positive reviews when it was at the theater, but I enjoyed it. It's this kid and this monster that wants to like take him away from his family and stuff. I thought it was really well done. I discovered this movie thanks to the How Did This Get Made podcast called Voyage of the Rock Aliens. It's from 1984, and it stars the program's Craig Schaefer in one of his earlier roles. It's a musical about these aliens that come to Earth to be rock musicians, but they're really already rock musicians, so it's kind of confusing on why they're coming to Earth at all in the first place. But then it's just a bunch of scenes of musical stuff, and a weird octopus that lives in the sea, and weird, just bizarre things that happen. Man, it's a weird movie. It's on Tubi. If that interested anybody in what I just said. Let's see. I watched the new Paranormal Activity movie. Didn't really care for that. Thought it was better than most of the rest of them, but still didn't really like it. I've been rewatching the Final
They're
Destination
on Paranormal
films.
Activities. What, 7?
I believe it was 7. Yeah, Next of Kin. It really. What's silly about it is like, honestly, it's a better movie if it's not a Paranormal Activity movie, because it's about like a cult, like, which has nothing to do with the Paranormal Activity movies at all. So it was really weird that they went with like, hey, let's do a new Paranormal Activity movie that has nothing to do with the franchise. Um, let's see. I've been rewatching the Final Destination films. I'm on the 4th one right now. I'll talk about more of those more when I finish 4 and 5. I watched Slapface on Shudder. That was Let's see. Anything else that I watched that was any good? Not really. Because last night we watched The Deep House. That was okay. The cool thing about The Deep House, if you have Hulu, it's not a great movie, but it's this film that is about a haunted house underwater. It's like this preserve house in France, and the directors actually shot everything in that house underwater with their actors in like scuba gear and stuff as they play scuba divers trying to, go and like check out this weird haunted underwater place. Lots of cool imagery and
Scuba
stuff.
Steve, damn you!
Yeah, the movie, it doesn't really hold up throughout the whole film. It's kind of like Paranormal Activity, the original. It's slow to start, where you're like with these characters and nothing's really happening, and it's kind of boring. I don't like those type of movies that like they try to introduce you to characters that you don't really care about, and you don't need to care about. It's like, just get to the good stuff. But yeah, it was okay. So if you want to check that one out, it's on Hulu. I do, like I said, I recommend it mainly for the fact that it's an interesting way to make a movie, I think. Let's see. That's pretty much it. I've still got a bunch of shows I got to catch up on, but I'll get to those at some point. Anything else you want to talk about, Wayne?
Nope. I got my Star Wars stuff in there, so I'm good.
All right. Oh, and I did see Spider-Man. I took Donovan to see Spider-Man No Way Home again for a second time. We both liked it again, as much as we did the first time. So definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. It'll be on digital, I believe, March 1st, I think. All right. So news and notes this week. Jason Momoa in talks to join Fast franchise, possibly as the final villain. So he originally was going to be in Hobbs and Shaw, but had to bow out because he was busy, I believe, with Aquaman at the time. So he was replaced by Cliff Curtis, and now he gets to go on and be a villain in the main franchise. Stephen King's The Boogeyman film will be a Hulu original directed by the host filmmaker Rob Savage. Sophie Thatcher from the breakout hit Yellow Jackets and indie darling Chris Messina are both going to star. Joseph Morgan from the originals and Vampire Diaries joins Titans Season 4 as unknown villain. Ivory Aquino cast his first DC trans character, Alicia Yao, in Batgirl feature film for HBO Max. It Takes Two video game has a movie adaptation in the works. Coralie Fargi, the director of Revenge, will write and direct Substance for Universal with Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley set to star. Bob Odenkirk and David Cross are re-teaming on faux docu-series for Paramount Plus called Guru Nation. Stephen Lang, Bruce Dern, and Shane West will star in horror film Mid-Century. Billy Summers, one of Stephen King's new books, getting miniseries via Bad Robot and Edward Zwick. Oren Moverman to direct Raised Eyebrows with Jeffrey Rush as Groucho Marx. Sienna Miller also stars. SEAL Team, The Game, and Mayor of Kingstown all renewed at Paramount Plus. Jamie Dornan joins Gal Gadot spy thriller at Netflix called Heart of Stone. Joseph Gordon-Levitt cast as cult leader Jim Jones in film White Knight. Chloe Grace Moretz will also star in what is now the second Jim Jones film announced. Leonardo DiCaprio will star as Jim Jones in a film called Jim Jones. No word on release for either film yet. Tom Ellis from Lucifer and Sterling King Brown from This Is Us will star in Washington Black TV series adaptation at Hulu. Tales of the Walking Dead anthology series casts as its first stars Anthony Edwards, Parker Posey, Terry Crews, Poppy Leo, and Jillian Bell. Donald Faison cast in Legends of Tomorrow Season 7. Yellowstone officially receives Season 5 renewal. Dakota Johnson officially in talks to play Madam Web in Sony Spider-Man spinoff. Scream 6 officially in the works with Radio Silence returning to direct and Kevin Williamson returning to produce. Filming starts this summer. Priyanka Chopra and Anthony Mackie to star in assassin film Ending Things. Supernatural and Walker prequel series ordered at CW. Gotham Knights series also ordered at CW. The Color Purple remake has a cast. Taraji P. Henson, Corey Hawkins, Her, Danielle Brooks, Fantasia Barrino, Coleman Domingo, and Haley Bailey. It's an adaptation of the Broadway musical and will be directed by Blitz Bazawule. New Goosebumps series headed to Disney Plus as well. Release is coming up. Anatomy of a Scandal from the creator of Big Little Lies and The Undoing, starring Sienna Miller, Michelle Dockery, and Rupert Friend and Naomi Scott, hits Netflix April 15th. The Adam Project with Ryan Reynolds and Mark Ruffalo hits Netflix March 11th. No Exit hits Hulu February 25th. Halo debuts March 24th on Paramount Plus. Jennifer Reeder's new horror film Night's End with Thelonious Monk and Michael Shannon hits Shudder March 31st. Choose or Die with Asa Butterfield and Robert Englund hits Netflix April 15th. The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray hits Apple Plus March 11th. That's with Samuel L. Jackson in the lead role. Also, Walt Goggins will star with Samuel L. Jackson in that. Deaths this week. Moses J. Mosley from The Walking Dead dies at 31. J.P. Loubson, Witchboard and Witch Trap. Paul Kellman from the original My Bloody Valentine passed away at 72. Bob Wall, End of the Dragon, dead at 82. Monica Vitti, Italian actress, dead at 90. And Howard Hessman, dead at 81. Former actor, was in one of the police academies, but in one of my favorite TV shows, Head of the Class. I never watched the radio when he was on. That was a little before my time, and the reruns were never around. But I was always a huge
WKRP.
fan.
It was fantastic as Dr. Johnny Fever.
Yeah, I never watched it. I've been trying to find it, and it's really hard to stream it. So, if somebody knows where I can find it, let me know. That's our show for the week, everybody. I know it seemed like we rambled on there a little bit towards the end. I apologize. But yeah, it's been fun doing these every week. We hope you all had a good time listening. Thank you for listening to Now Showing with Mike and Wayne.
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
Hasta la vista, baby.
Hey, everybody, we're all gonna get laid.